We always say seat time is king, so sit on down and listen in to Motorsports Tech Talk with your hosts, Brian and Eric. Eric, how's it going?
Pretty good. Did some mini moto practice this morning. Feel like I'm getting the hang of it. It's dope. Actually, I'm all about it right now. It's my thing now.
Yeah, did it go better than the last time?
Yes and no. So, funny story actually. So my tires suck, and kart tracks suck for grip. Indoor ones anyway, because they're polished concrete. They're looking at the longevity of their own tires. They don't care about your grip level. But the grippiest tire supposedly you can get on that track, at least in winter, is some white walls, right? For scooters. And they don't look sticky at all, but someone bought them as a joke and he was already fast, but he was part of the fast pack, and he went about a second faster than everyone else. So it's like the thing now. Now you show up and almost everybody has white walls.
It's
dope.
it's like the new meta.
Pretty much. So I bought some, I installed them, and then when I installed them on the wheel, and when I went to put them on the bike, I tried to inflate them, and I realized I pinched one of the tubes in one of them, so I was super pissed off. Took it to a place, and I'm like, hey, you guys do this, because I don't have time right now. And they bent my wheel. I bought the wheel from some company that doesn't really advertise where they come from, but I'm pretty sure they're just China wheels. It's very low quality steel. But still, so I was all stoked to go in with some grippy white walls, and that didn't happen. But I think it worked out for the better for my learning curve, because I guess without getting too deep into it, which we can if you want, but effectively for this type of thing, what you do is you just let the bike go down. You let it go down. You lean over, like you're putting a knee on the ground, and the bike will fall because it's a child's 50cc bike. It's got no weight and no speed behind it, and it's just going to fall over. And then when it does, you wait, because it's on an arc, right, as it's falling, because you're in a corner, it's going through the corner. You use your knee sort of as a pivot to like kind of hold it up so you're not just all the way on the ground. And then as soon as it's pointing the direction you want to go, you give it the beans, and the bike uprights itself, and you just let it pull you up with it. And that's like, I could have explained that before watching like supermoto videos and stuff, but like actually physically doing it, there's just some sort of brain barrier I had. But I got it now, son. I'm doing it. I'm all about it.
Nice.
Getting those like 80-degree lean angles. It's fucking sick. So yeah, I'm gonna sell some shit and buy a supermoto bike for summer. It's my thing. It's my new thing. I suck, but it's I'm all about it now.
So now once you get your sticky tires, now you'll just be that much better. You're ready for them.
Pretty much, dude. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with the wheel. Like maybe try and straighten it out, or maybe try and buy someone's used wheel if they sell them by one. But yes, I'll get the sticky tires on there before the next race. I got the technique kind of down. Watch out, I'm coming, son.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Good to hear. Good, making some progress.
Oh yeah. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, still progressing towards getting the Spec Miata kind of ready for the season. I dropped the transmission off to get rebuilt a few weeks ago. It sounds like it's ready as of today, so that's
Nice.
That's good. I got my built cylinder head in, so that's ready to go. I think so. I mean, the trans has got to go in now because there's no transmission in it right now because that's the one I rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
But so that'll go in. I got to do my rear end. I'm rebuilding the rear end, the rear diff, and as well as swapping from the 410 rear end ratio
Yes.
to a 430. So that should be a big help for me. It's the 410 is allowed in NASA, but not in SCCA. So since I raced NASA, I decided to try it out for a season, as well as just kind of being lazy. It's already in the car.
Yeah.
So I tried it out, and I just didn't like it. It made it hard to kind of race in a pack, because when you come up on someone, you try to bump draft, you're in different gears. So maybe you have a good run on them, you'd give them the bump, and then I'd shift, but then they'd still be in like the better portion of third gear or something after I shift from second to third or something like that, and they would just fly away, and it was frustrating. There were a few tracks it helped because it allowed me to use second gear to kind of pull out of corners, but ultimately that led to some. It was part of the reason that led to a few transmission failures, because I was just using the 2-3 shift,
Yeah, just all
and
the
the
time.
3-2 downshift. Just way more. Like I did the numbers, and like basically I use it 10 times more than any other competitor, in at least in this region for the tracks we go to. So and there's a pretty wide spread between them, so it's just really hard. The synchros are working hard on that one, and if you're trying to go as fast as possible and banging that thing into gear, it wasn't happy. I definitely could have smoothed it out, may have been a little slower, but and made it last longer. But ultimately, I think the main culprit is that rear end. So
Okay.
once I go to the 430, I think I might gain some speed, as well as make it easier to race.
Yeah.
Close with everyone.
You're going to be getting more of those first place trophies.
Yep, that's the plan.
All
That's
right.
the plan. That's the hope. That's the dream. So
Good.
yeah, and then the engine build's starting. I mean, I have all the parts now, so I don't plan to have it ready for the start of the season. I think it's going to be like a mid-season refresh, get it ready for nationals. So I think the goal is to get it in for Gingerman, since it's the premier racing track in the United States.
It is definitely the best.
Everyone wants to win it. So I think I need to do Gingerman proud, and then get the thing in there for that one. But but yeah, that's coming along. That's always good. Didn't make as much progress on the Champcar as hoped. It's
Sure.
I mean, I can make as many excuses as I want, but it was like 10 degrees out this weekend, which doesn't help in the non-insulated garage, since the insulated garage is filled with other projects.
Yeah. Well, really, the different version of the same project, kind of. Another Champcar Starion. So, okay.
Yep. So, I guess speaking of Champcar, there was the first race of the season this weekend at glorious hot Road Atlanta, but
dude.
maybe not so hot this weekend.
No, it snowed. I believe this year and last year, and I don't know, maybe the year before, but yeah, man.
At least the last 2 years.
Yeah, Brazelton, Georgia, dude, bringing the snow. Who'd have guessed?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a race in the snow yet, but I mean, I imagine it's similar to racing in the rain, but you can't see anything. You can't see anything in the rain either, so I imagine it's worse, especially at night, because it was snowing at night, and that can't be fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
or maybe it's really extra fun.
Yeah, that too. It all depends on your approach, I suppose. But
yeah, so
yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Road Atlanta. I mean, weather aside, like you just said, it might not be fun, but I love that track personally. It's few corners, pretty high speed. Almost every corner is blind for whatever reason, but yeah, man, those downhill S's, and back straight, and yeah, it's turn 12. It's all fun, good times.
Oh yeah, yeah. Turn 12 is definitely a fun one, and just coming over that, coming up to the bridge there before turn 12. I guess that's turn 11.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the it's in the video games, especially because a lot of time in like say Forza, I play with third person view just because it's easier to see. Definitely not as realistic, of course, but when you're in the car and you're going over that hill, you just can't see anything. You have to kind of pick a point on that bridge to aim yourself, and then once you come over, then you'll find yourself in the right spot. But I remember when I first did a practice day there for a Champcar race, I went out there, was doing a lap, and then I came up on that, and just I was way too far left, and I just bailed into the pit lane and just did a quick little little
Yeah,
little detour.
it's crazy too.
So-
Like it doesn't. I mean, this is sort of the case with everything, and like all elevation change, in real life compared to a video game. But you really don't appreciate it until you're there. And going through 11, you go under the bridge, you cross the hill, and I remember thinking like, holy shit, this is steep. Like driving into the track, I felt the same way. Because the entrance is to the right of that, or at least as you're coming in. Not track right, but you're like, wow, this is way steeper than I thought. And yeah, actually doing it at pace, it's like, oh, this is, the ground's really falling away from you. And
Yeah.
if you use the motorcycle route, I believe the beginning of that route is the same as the pit in that you used, that Champcar uses. Is that right?
Yeah.
Just
I
all the
think
way
so.
on the left?
Yeah.
Yeah, so without that right hand curve down, that's even steeper, right? It's crazy. It's fun. But yeah, it was a big shock.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do really like it. I haven't gotten to do an actual race there yet, so it's definitely on the list of to do, on the bucket list of doing a race there. So maybe soon. Definitely one thing. Being in Michigan, it's a little bit of a pain to prep your car for that race in February because right now it's 10 degrees. We have like a foot of snow on the ground, and
Yeah, it sucks.
just doing the work out in the shop in this kind of weather, as well as towing out there, and the roads are plowed and everything, but it's not as fun as as doing it when it's not freezing cold. So
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
but
Michigan sucks. So
yeah, it's but yeah, it looked like up to that point, because I believe the race ended around, I think it was close to, it looks like maybe 3 hours early due to the snow, which probably a good idea. I mean,
right.
don't want anyone wadding up their cars for no reason.
Right.
It's I don't know of any other race series that races in the snow other than like snow rally stuff or ice racing, but
Yeah. It would be funny though if some teams showed up with like some Blizzaks. Be funny.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think last year Parts Badger had, I know they had some like Connie extreme contacts. They might have also brought like almost a snow tire, but like they brought like a 300 treadwear, all season, or maybe not all season, but like summer tire, and yeah, they were like moving. That's basically how they got the win last year.
Yeah.
Which I could definitely see as definitely an advantage.
Oh, for sure.
But this year we had Cone Crushers with their Porsche 944 taking the W. R-Bank Racing in second with their CRX.
Okay.
So two pretty
Yeah, well-known teams.
well-known teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've been around a long time. We have John Allen Special, also been around a very long time, but with a newer car as of I believe last year with their Mini Cooper S. So I think that's their best finish. It's always interesting to see the newer cars come in. A 2007, that's quite a bit newer
Yeah.
than the 1980s 80s cars in front of them.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah, and then we have Visceral Racing Group in fourth with their 944, another staple. And then Leviathan Motorsports with their MR2, and who also I believe been around a very long time. So kind of the top five, kind of the old guard, I'd say.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
nothing too. Yeah, nothing too. I guess I didn't notice any kind of interesting, crazy new builds or anything. Like nothing that would shock the balance or anything. It looks like mostly everyone just made their off-season updates. I think there was it seemed like there were a lot of new Miatas out there. Just nice, fresh Miata builds.
Yeah. Well, it is a fantastic platform.
Yeah,
It's always the answer.
I'd say it's good in nearly every way for Champcar other than its fuel capacity. That's definitely its Achilles heel there.
Yeah.
But
I hear what you're saying, but I think it's good in every way for every application. My humble opinion.
yeah, well, how many do you own right now?
Right now, I'm down to 0.
Yeah, well, that doesn't sound like someone who's really endorsing the platform.
Well, I only have one car right now, so
Yeah, that's it's like the opposite of me. So
Yep. Yin and yang, bro. That's it.
yeah, that's how we achieve balance here on Motorsports Tech Talk. But I guess it looked like a lot of people had a good time, but there was also a little bit of drama as there tends to be.
Yeah. So I mean,
believe
there's always drama, but I saw the Facebook pages lighten up with people talking about derbies and passing multiple cars under multiple different reds. Tell me about that. What's the sitch?
Well, so I don't know. Road Atlanta. So I've been there. I went there 2 years. For 2 years, I can't remember which years. It was a couple years back. I was there with GWR. I was just crewing for them, and I was able to get a little bit of track time during the practice day, but for the most part, I was just crewing, helping out, and I don't know what it is, but it seems like every year there's lots of incidents, and it'll start early. It started the practice day. I think 2 years in a row there were cars that flipped during the practice day, and
that's surprising. Yeah,
very surprising. Yeah, because it's like an open track day. There's no point buys or anything, although people will give them, which is perfectly considerate, I think, for just a track day. I mean, they're not racing, but yeah, I think it's just maybe there's some guys getting in the cars that they're getting up to speed. Maybe this is their first time ever on the track or in that car, so they're getting up to speed, and then you got the guys who are all ready to go up to speed and maybe trying to test some stuff out in their car and see what kind of lap times they can get. So those two seem to contend to clash. Maybe the other person just doesn't see them coming, and with all the blind corners and it being a relatively technical track, it just seems to tend to lead to a lot of issues, on top of also kind of being the first race of the season. Although I guess it depends on where you are. I mean, the races in Champcar go into December. Usually, at least I don't think last year it had Sebring in December, but usually you have like a New Year's Eve Sebring race. So like a lot of times the racing goes pretty far in, and then so that only leaves you really a month off. But I imagine most teams, I mean, maybe in that region, like might have done Sebring and then Road Atlanta, but maybe some of the teams traveling out, they haven't raced since October or something like that. So, I mean, whenever I start the like a spec Miata season, it does take me a couple sessions to really kind of get back in the groove. So it could be kind of that off-season rust, but then that instead of just causing slow lap times, it's causing incidents. But yeah, I don't know. It's strange. It seems to always be some sort of issues. It's usually a well-attended race as well. There's usually around 100 entrants, so that can obviously extra traffic makes things potentially more potential incidents to happen. But I don't know. It seems to happen every year. Where this year it seemed to show up basically on like the first lap, or maybe not even almost not the first lap, before the first lap. Similar. Very similar to our little Daytona incident a week ago, where just someone. What it looked like to me is one of the teams, they come over the radio with the call for green, and with how many cars there are on track, a lot of times it can, you'll be not even through 10 by the time it goes green at the start finish. So
Right.
they get the green, but there's still yellows shown at the corner worker stations because they haven't pulled them yet. But they get the green call, so they just gun it, and then somehow one of the teams managed to basically just punt from behind one of a Camaro, I believe, just off the track. And yeah, it's not a good start.
So it sounds like they could be a pro BMW GTLM driver, for starters.
Yeah.
But yeah, also to show for ourselves, that sounds sort of like more people should have radios, which if they listen to our last podcast about what we would recommend having when you go to the track, you could avoid these issues.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's come up in drivers' meetings before where if start finish is green, the whole track should be green, but just maybe the corner workers just didn't get the call quick enough, or they just a little delayed on putting the flag down. So the teams that don't have radios just still see the yellow, and whereas the teams that do are gunning it. But yeah, I mean it was a BMW that caused the incident, so it's very
it's even better.
Similar as similar as it could be to IMSA. I mean, sometimes people try to say do what the pros do, learn from them, but yeah, maybe this not the case here.
And maybe in this case, don't drive into the guy who's in front of you before you pass the checker, before the race even really starts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 14-hour race, and it's yeah, things happen, but
Right.
But I think that that caused what we like to call a come to Jesus meeting. So I believe they black flag all and brought them all into the pits to give them a little talking to, maybe get them to calm down a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, it kind of works sometimes, but with it being the start already, I mean, everyone was already. I mean, maybe it cools them down a little bit, but yeah, but then it sounds like issues kind of continued. I mean, there's always passing under yellow, but maybe it sounded like there was a lot, a lot more than usual, and some passing under red flags, which that's a strange one.
Yeah, passing under red flags.
Maybe
the only time I would expect to see it is despite what the rule book says and what they say in the drivers' meeting, and sort of what common sense says, I have seen people throw out the parachute when they see it, right? And they come to a very quick stop, not a safe, smooth, controlled stop. So I would, I personally don't get upset when I see people make passes when that happens, because it's you know, don't fucking ABS stop like into the guy in front of you because, you know, they're stopping so quick, right? Just go around them. You got a whole track. So this is my personal feeling is if that happens, okay. But yeah, generally, you know, if you're just driving around the track and everybody else has stopped, you're missing something.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, again, it could be down to, you know, newer drivers not knowing where the flag stations are, but and with a lot of blind corners, sometimes it's a little tricky. But from what I remember, I mean, a lot of the flag stations really weren't at the corners, weren't hard to see. It was just maybe once you got over it, you wouldn't really see what's happening, you know, beyond it. So kind of even more incentive to slow down. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be passing under yellow. I wasn't sure if I saw any other kind of more major incidents, but I don't know. Just there's definitely a lot of buzz going around the social medias and everything.
Well, good.
But yeah, it's end of the day, it's an endurance, it's an amateur endurance racing series. You know, you don't need any experience at all to race, which, you know, some people see as bad because, you know, they don't want to race with people like that. But I mean, I honestly, I see it overall as good because it just gets more people into the sport, and
Right.
not having, you know, barriers is nice.
Yeah, I mean, it gets people into the sport. And, I mean, a lot of it is, you know, I mean, you could adopt the, like, NASA approach, I guess, but you don't want to get to the point where it's like most college students trying to find a job right now, you know, entry level, 10 years experience required sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to do that. So
No, yeah, I think there could be, there's definitely merits to both systems. I guess the problem, maybe not problem, I guess the critique of the NASA system I have is it's just it's good to get people up to speed, you know, kind of slowly, and have them work their way up in a kind of nice controlled environment with the instructors and everything. But I don't know, it seems like they're pushing for for you to do more and more events before they'll check you off to HPD 2, 3, 4. And that can cost a lot of money. I mean, in track days and you know, consumables and everything.
right.
When if your ultimate goal is to just go racing, you know, they can kind of you know, add a barrier to your entry into this sport. So I think it's good. It's good to have a place where people can just jump in if they want to. But I think just everyone participating needs to understand that and be aware that you know, there's going to be people out there that, you know, have never done this before. So try to give a little more room. Try to be ready. Anticipate some weird moves that you don't expect. But yeah, it's kind of, I see it as part of the game. It's part of the experience as a driver in Champcar racing, like to know where to put your car and be ready for, you know, some weird stuff.
Yeah, you know, I agree, honestly. And then, you know, to draw more comparisons to other racing, like based off that LMP3 race, is it really that far off? You know, like,
or even GTLM.
yeah. I mean, it's you know, sometimes people are going to make boneheaded moves, and that's part of racing. You got to be able to deal with it, right? If you're driving your car at 10 tenths the whole time, first of all, no, you're not, because I'm sure Lewis Hamilton could go faster, right? So relax. But also, if you're doing that, if you're driving at your limit, and you're leaving no room to adjust It's just kind of that's a rookie move as well, I think. You might think you're an all-star driver, but, if you can't make some slight change or anticipate a need to make one, so just leave that extra barrier in case you do, then, it takes two to tango for the most part.
Yeah.
If you're a Camaro and you get rear-ended, I don't know. But most of the time, it takes two to tango.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the way, I guess one thing I've noticed is I wouldn't say a lot of the blame or really blame, but I think one thing that can cause, I think, or that one way this could be avoided is, I think, from the team captain really laying down kind of the ground rules right off the bat. Because I've raced with some teams where they're basically like, go out there, go as fast as you can. You need to go, you need to pass every person. You can't get stuck behind people. We want to win. Go as fast as possible. Go fast, don't hit stuff.
Right.
Is their motto. But I've noticed that. I mean, I've witnessed it not turn out too well in a few cases. And then I've raced with a team or two where they more talk about saving the car, being consistent, and as far as I remember, that car in the few races I drove it really only had 2 incidents, and both of them were basically maybe more caused by another vehicle. Just kind of one was caused by a car that I believe the team's been banned from Champcar, and then another one. It was just they were coming out of the pits, or we were coming out of the pits, and it was just it was raining, and it seemed to be just a misjudgment maybe on one or both the drivers. So, but otherwise, I mean, pretty clean. So I think if you make sure the driver knows kind of what's expected of them, so they don't have to guess, and also give them realistic expectations. Don't be like, we need you to be at this lap time, knowing that maybe they probably can't get there.
Right. Yeah, that's a bad move for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely good to try to kind of set those ground rules. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, and then as a driver, it's also important for you to be realistic with yourself, and try to be as confident as possible without being overconfident that you're doing moves that you're not gonna be able to pull off. So
right, it's an interesting juggling act, I find, that you may not have in sprint racing, or even pro racing if you're like the gentleman driver. You're the guy paying for it or whatever. You're there to have fun, first of all. You guys want to do well. You and your team want to do well. You want to go fast. You kind of want to push yourself. You want to make some passes. If you start playing mind games with yourself, typically driver confidence goes down. You can start overthinking things, and that's bad. So it's weird because you don't really want to think about it while you're in the car, but you also do need to recognize that there's 3 other dudes or so, or ladies, if they're driving, that are waiting for their turn. If you bend the car, that everybody's done, not just you, right? And if you're renting, it might be a big paycheck to, pay for the car, or if the person who built the car just takes it as a hit, that sucks for them. It's a lot of time and money. Even if you do it cheaply, it's a decent amount of money. So yeah, you do also have to realize that, like, it is an endurance race. Every lap isn't the last lap. And you have an entire team that wants to race, right? Let's be blunt. We're all a bunch of pores, and we want to go race. This is the best way for us to do it. So if you went from Michigan to Road Atlanta and bend the car in your first session, got a lot of people who just drove from Michigan to Road Atlanta, and they're not going to be able to race a race car. You know, it sucks.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good point. Like you have to consider all the other people, on your team. Like one thing that I kind of like about Spec Miata is that because it's just me and my car, anything I do is my fault and only really reflects on me and only hurts me. So
Yeah.
not that I go out there just trying to take people out and everything, but when it happens from time to time, it's nice to know that you can just take full responsibility for it and not worry about ruining kind of anyone else's weekend, other than of course the guy you hit. But in both cases, I mean, you're in the Champcar case and the Spec Miata case, I mean, you're taking someone out. You're already ruining their weekend, and then on top of that, you're ruining your entire your team's weekend. So
Yeah.
It's definitely something to consider for sure. You don't have to get the fastest lap on your team or in the race, you can still win without doing that, as long as you're just consistent and making good moves and have good strategy. So,
Right.
like what we said in the last episode, you take some of those tips and don't wreck your car in the first lap, then you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
So, yeah, I'm sure it won't be the last time something like that happens, but I think nowadays the outrage is a little too quick, and like just let people kind of dissect it a little bit and first before you just start calling for them to be banned from the series.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fair, right? If if one car has a radio and they get called green and they're expecting everyone to go, I mean, they say that you don't win on the first lap, but you can lose on it, which is definitely true. But as you also know, if you give up a position, you can spend many, 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 many laps trying to fight to get it back. So I understand jumping right when you hear the call for green, right? And it's not your fault the other team doesn't have a radio. But these cars are not high-powered cars. As we mentioned, like with the BMW and GTLM, the BMW's the size of a yacht, but most of these race cars are lightweight and they got a decent amount of power. So you stab it expecting everyone to go because it's green, and they don't. And before you can do anything, you're already in the, in their trunk, or in the Porsche's case, in their engine bay. But this, honestly, I would expect a little more out of a driver, even though you're an amateur. I mean, what do you have? 200 horsepower, right? Maybe, maybe, and like 3,000 pounds at a minimum. I mean, for a normal full size car, not a Miata, obviously. Yeah, like you should be able to tell that the guy in front of you is not going. And now in that video, it does look like they try to avoid it too late. Right? He does swerve and then hit the Camaro. So he tries to react, but still, I expect a little bit more, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, we all make mistakes, but so.
I mean, and that's the name of the game too, right? Is it sucks, but it's racing. So if you're not comfortable showing up and riding off your car, you shouldn't be there. Even if it's not your fault, you need to, expect to be able to ride everything off. So
you need to be ready for that potential outcome. And in this case, I'm not sure how much damage the Camaro got. You couldn't really see in the video I saw, but I mean, it looked like the BMW was okay. I mean, they kept driving, so probably just some front bumper damage and everything. But yeah, no one likes to see it. So, hopefully, that driver will learn from that and not do it again. As long as we keep improving, then maybe this stuff will start to be more and more rare.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about tonight as well, or today, or whenever you're listening. We're recording this at night, but kind of looking at the list and seeing a newer car, a 2007 Mini Cooper. It makes me think about like the future of kind of this budget endurance racing, and what kind of cars we'll see, and then also makes me think, will eventually we just not be able to get a manual transmissioned race car, for cheap?
Right.
Will it?
Yeah, I mean, so there's the obvious options that exist right now. One day you will see ND Miatas and BRZs in there.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what's going to happen. Manuals are starting to go away. I guess kind of dual clutch transmissions are at a lower price point, but not really. I mean, they're still pretty expensive. And then, I mean, you have automatics. Now, they're much better than the days of old, right? You already talked about the difference of, the 2007 and the two cars made in the 80s in front of it, right? The transmission you get today or tomorrow that you would be racing with in 10 years or whatever is not a slush box. I mean, it's an automatic transmission, which is, what the slang means. So kind of, I guess it is, but it doesn't feel like it. The shifts are smoother, or, they can be faster. The calibration is significantly better, right? And things are electronically actuated rather than trying to build pressure in these valve bodies that sit at the bottom of your old, automatic trans. So, I don't really know what we'll see, or what people will use. I can't imagine it'll be a field of just, the BRZ and Miata, right? I mean, Civic still exists and whatever, but, the variety is shrinking for sure. But you're not going to be allowed to have, at least for something like Champcar, you're not going to be allowed to have those higher end cars that have a manual because it's an enthusiast thing, right? You're not going to see an M2 show up, I don't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a good question.
In the main classes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree. It's a good question. I don't really know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the variety will change. I mean, you'll still see the older cars, but I imagine at some point the viability of running a 1970s or 80s car, in 2030 or something might be, less and less possible due to just parts availability, and especially in maybe not as commonly raced platforms. So yeah, your Miata, your E30, I mean, they'll have some staying power, but if you're racing something a lot more obscure,
Conquest,
it might like a Conquest, or I don't know, like a Fiero, or I don't know, just anything that's maybe they didn't sell that many and back in the day, so there's really not as much incentive for places to stock parts or keep making them. So I think it'll change. I mean, they'll obviously have to adjust what cars are allowed and everything, but I don't know. I mean, I guess specifically talking about like manuals and automatics and everything. I mean, it's pretty rare to see a traditional manual transmission in professional racing anymore. I mean, it's
right.
it's all dual clutch or sequential
Mm-hmm.
transmissions, and
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
I think
I don't see.
the Mercedes GT4 car has one, and I think that's it.
Hmm,
Like that's if you
I
wanted a
mean,
manual, that's your
yeah, I
option.
mean, but I don't really see race drivers really complaining about that. I mean, they just want to go fast. They want to go
Yeah, they're
as
trying
fast
to
as possible. They
win,
want to win races.
right? If you're trying to
Yeah.
win a race, you don't want a manual. Manuals are fun. I like them, right? I, I haven't had anything that's not a manual. Or I mean, even if you include bikes as like sequential, I haven't had an automatic in a long time, right? CTSV and Miatas. I'm a fan.
Hmm.
I understand that way of life, but but yeah, if you're trying to win a race, it's not the answer. You know, they're great for going
Yeah, I
out on
mean,
track and like being one with the car, but they're not fast. A dual clutch transmission is significantly faster, and if you're trying to win a race, that's what you want, right? So
yeah,
yeah, you're not going to
yeah.
see a race car driver complain about that.
And there's other factors too, like driveline shock and reliability, and
Hmm.
I mean, so we've raced. So we have a Volvo. I guess at least a friend of ours has a, Volvo 960 wagon that we raced in Lemons and Champcar.
Yeah,
And
buddy.
Eric's driven it. I've driven it a lot, and the car only came in an automatic. So the 940s had a manual option, but the 960s were just the more high end plush luxury mobile with the straight six and an automatic transmission. And yeah, we raced it with the auto for a few years, and one thing I really liked about it was it other than sometimes it could be a little unreliable, just overheating and such. It was very consistent and very easy for the drivers. Like we wouldn't have to worry about a money shift. You wouldn't have to worry about someone not downshifting right, not heel towing. Like
Right.
it was it was both easier on the car and easier, for the drivers too. Like, I mean, you could left foot brake if you wanted to, but also like the brake zones were just that much easier. I mean, it definitely the performance isn't as good under braking because you don't have the engine braking you do with a manual. But as
Hmm.
long as the brakes are sized adequately, which on a Volvo 960 they were, because that thing is even meant for towing. But
Yeah, I mean,
it yeah, it was nice.
there were the headaches of an old transmission, which I think we've already covered. If you have an automatic in future racing, from today, you're not going to have. Um, so there were some tricks, right? You put it in D3 or whatever because it didn't have the overdrive, and if it ever shifted into
Hmm.
overdrive, you were just boned. Um,
Yeah.
so there was some weird stuff there, but I mean, you're right. It's definitely way smoother on the drivetrain, 100%. Um, and I guess we can get into how the OEs approach that in a minute, but I guess really to belabor your point, uh, just, the mutual friend swapped a manual into that. Sweet, it's awesome. All right, they're fun. Um, how long did that last?
Yeah, so we did one practice day. It went pretty well. And then so we did have we are I mean it was a used transmission, no rebuild or anything. So we just went right into it. We I think he was just using a standard kind of like Mobile One gear oil, and so it was already having the first practice day. It had some downshifting issues, just a little crunchy if you didn't rev match it just right. Um, so we switched to like red line, and that seemed to help it. And unfortunately, its first race, with the manual, it had a kind of completely unrelated issue. It was it overheated due to a coolant hose popping off, which really it just ended the weekend. Basically, we lost the engine, but we then did another test day after that, just kind of for fun, as well as the James who owns it. He wanted to have his son try it, try out some driving on the track and everything. So we had him in the car, and he hasn't driven too many manuals since it's kind of hard to find them nowadays and
Mm-hmm.
in cars. But he practiced beforehand. But yeah, he just he just wasn't as smooth as we were. I have a lot of experience with heel towing and everything, and yeah, he blew up third gear pretty quickly. And so if we still had the auto in there, I don't think we would have had that issue.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the manual in this case was faster, although we've made a lot of changes to the car other than the transmission.
Right.
For one, the manual transmission in that car versus the automatic that came with it is about 150 pounds heavier. So,
There you go.
or the auto is heavier, and so that alone was good for lap time. But in some cases, I think the gear spread was a little tighter versus the 4-speed auto, with fourth being overdrive. So it's really only 3 speeds that are usable,
Right.
and then first gear isn't very usable. So you basically did the whole track in 2 gears.
But I mean that's
It allowed for
well, the driver being able to pick their gear, we know is going to be faster, right? At least compared to the old slush box.
yeah
That's what we expect. But
yeah
you know, you get someone who's maybe not as experienced, which isn't a problem, right? This is an amateur racing series. This is where you cut your teeth. But
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess for those interested, it was a second faster around Gingerman with the manual versus the auto in this case. But as I said, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I think with more modern transmissions with lockup torque converters that are tuned for much more lockup use versus flex and slip or lockup off. Basically, with the latest technology, especially that we're seeing in for example, the ZF transmissions that seem to be in basically every car now.
yeah, everything.
The 10-speed. The 10-speed that's in the F-150, the Silverado, the Camaro, it's like everything basically.
Yep.
With those, they're basically able to size the torque converter much smaller because of the much more use of lockup. So in that case, basically there's a clutch that allows, or that basically removes the torque converter from the assembly. It locks it up, so now it's not slipping anymore, and it allows for some very, very fast but still smooth shifts and a lot less heat generation. And yeah, I mean, having 10 speeds on a track could be pretty nice. I mean, F1 cars have 8, so
Right.
more
Yeah, I think
more gears can help.
yeah, these ones are sized really for fuel economy. That's really where the this whole like wanting to have more gears thing came from. But yeah, it definitely could help. Especially if you're racing in an automatic and not doing the select to shift thing and letting it do its own thing, right? You're just gonna have a lot more gears down low. So I guess as long as it's not shifting all the time, which comes down to the cal, right?
Yeah.
It definitely could be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, with the kind of manual shifting or automatic, it's basically commonplace in every car I've seen in recent years, where it wasn't. I mean, it's not in the Volvo. There's only just like the L3 range, and I think you could do select second, and it just holds second for you're getting out of a snow rut or something mode. But yeah, now you have your manual shifting, so that kind of eliminates the whole. You don't know what the car is going to do. You don't have as much control over it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the lockup operation, you have kind of nicer shifts as well as less kind of loss, drivetrain loss. So,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially less heat too. So it's kind of a lot of benefits there. And yeah, so I could see. I haven't seen them really race too much, but I could see it becoming more popular, especially once it's harder and harder to find, manual transmission cars.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always going to be pushback from enthusiasts, right? Save the manuals.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I like manuals, but I don't think it's certainly worth fighting for all you people listening. Keep trying to get manuals if that's what you're doing. Right? If you want one, the way to ensure that they're going to be as made as long as possible, even if it's not forever, is by, creating that demand for them. That being said, most car enthusiasts are not really creating demand for them. They're cheap bastards like me, and they're not going out and buying new cars, which is understandable to me. New cars are incredibly expensive, and I personally don't ever really see myself buying a new car. But if you want to save the manual, that's how you do it, right? Is you are the demand in the supply and demand chain. But yeah, it's really interesting to me. I've had honestly a few people complain to me because they know I'm Ford Performance that they wish the GT500 came with a manual, right? And I understand that to some extent, but I have a few bullet points, rebuttals, I guess, right? So, just opening another White Claw real quick. So first of all, let's start with the GT500 is an expensive car. Awesome car. Fantastic car. I've read multiple reviews that say the transmission, which is a dual clutch, is as good as or better than the PDK, which has been the gold standard. It's the Porsche dual clutch. Fucking 30-syllable German name, of course. But, it's been the gold standard forever. And, to see that is awesome, right? So, it really is a good car. And that transmission is what's going to help it get good lap times, which is also what enthusiasts care about, right? You open up Road and Track and you say, you're a car and driver, I don't want to offend whoever's writing these articles. So some of them go to VIR and you compare those lap times, right? And that's what you're doing. You're looking at the lap times and, you want a faster lap time, you get a faster trans. So there's that argument, but it's a good car. It's an expensive car. It's a very expensive car. It starts expensive, and then dealerships do their own dealership markup bullshit, and then it finishes at a incredibly expensive car. So the next time someone says save the manuals, ask them if they're going to go buy a $100,000 Mustang. And I thought not, right? Get fucked. You're not buying that car. So what do you have to stand on when you complain about it? Honestly, just as a side note, for an alternative, I think the GT350 personally is even cooler just because I like the naturally aspirated engine, flat plane, high revving, and you can get a manual on that one, right? So you want a manual, go get that car. That's a driver's car. That's a real driver's car. Buy that. Oh, you're probably not going to buy a $40,000 used Mustang either, but go buy that one,
Yeah. Yeah. And we see it time and time again where you're on Jalopnik or whatever, even like Car and Driver or Road and Track where they have these articles, save the manuals. And it's, everyone's like, yeah, I mean, we want manuals. Like, you can't believe another car manufacturer took away the Supra, no manual, the GT500, no manual, Corvette, no manual, and but the thing is though, are any of these people commenting or putting in their commentary, are they going to buy a new Corvette? Kind of like what you said, like, are they going to buy a new GT500?
Yeah.
No.
No, they're not.
The person who can afford it probably wants the automatic because they're probably a little older and because they have the money and maybe they like that automatic life,
Yeah.
or if they want to take it to a track, it's going to be faster.
Yeah.
If they want to take it drag racing, it's going to be faster. I mean, drag racers have been using automatics for so many years. I mean, it's
just,
some,
as long as you're comparing performance metrics, OEs are going to be inclined to put not automatics or not manuals, in the car. Dual clutches or automatics, whatever it is, right? They're not going to want to have that manual in their 0 to 60 time, right? So.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the whole save the manuals thing, I've actually always kind of been not really on that side. I mean, personally, I'm doing my part. I'm leasing a 2019 Corolla hatch with a manual transmission, and I had to, I had to special order that to have the manual because, of course, you'll never find it on a dealer lot because they're just gonna put the CVT ones out there. But yeah, I mean, I did my part. I like it for driving around town, unless there's traffic, then I hate it. Or
Yeah.
But for driving around and kind of making the most of a kind of slow and boring car, I enjoy it. It's nice. It's no longer it no longer makes the car cheaper like it used to, really. Since they're lower volume and they know that the people who want it are going to potentially be willing to pay a little bit more for it.
Right. I mean, yeah. What you're talking about it's all about the scale, really, right? They're making so many automatics or CVTs, it ends up being cheaper. Even if the engineering or parts originally that go into that would be more expensive. They make so many of them and so few manuals that now it's an upcharge.
Yeah. It's interesting to see that. Like, you even see that with like Porsche took away from the GT3, they took away the manual, and then they came out with I think it was the 911R or that it was a limited production run, but that one is like already selling for like 4 times as much as the original value. And it's just interesting in some cases where it's very, very highly desired, but as far as like I understand the Jalopnik commenter or the Facebook commenter that wants more manuals because in 10 years, or in the case of like a GT500, maybe 25 years or something, when they can when most of us normal people can afford to put to pay for one of those. I mean, at that point, then it's much more affordable, maybe 20,000, 30,000. You want to be able to go buy one because then you can afford it and you want to have fun with it. But yeah, it's unfortunately the people buying new aren't demanding that. So
right.
If automakers can't make money on it, then why should they do it?
Right. Yeah, it's sort of a put your money where your mouth is thing, which is unfortunate because I feel like if a lot of people had the money, they would. Right. Cars are just crazy expensive. But also understanding that dynamic, it's kind of hard for me to, bitch about, right? So like, I have a V manual. They only came in manual for first gen. I would love it if the new, well, now it's a CT5 and whatever, but if the last gen, the third gen, had a manual, which it didn't, that'd be sweet. I'm also not going to go drop 87 grand at a dealership, right? Like, I understand that it's not fair for me to ask for that because I'm not buying it, you know. And for V's specifically, that fucking wagon, the second, you know what I'm talking about? Like, man, that all the enthusiasts want that. So a manual wagon that's been used and is now, I don't know, almost 10 years old is 60 grand still. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's rough.
So yeah, I mean, if you're an enthusiast with enough money to buy these cars, it could work out for you to get one and hold on to it and take care of it so that you could potentially sell it for more than you bought it for. So there is that potential option, but for most people buying it, they want a new car, they have the money, and so they go out and buy the automatic because maybe that's just what they want.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I guess going back to the racing with say an automatic, I haven't seen it too often yet, but I think we'll see it more and more soon, and I think it'll be much better than like our experience with the Volvo with a very old 90s. I mean, I think the design is it's a GM transmission in that, and very old 4-speed automatic. I don't think you can compare it to the latest 8 and 10 speeds.
Right. I think you will. It'll be a minute until you see any of like the crazy transmissions that exist now, which ZF almost has a monopoly on.
Yeah.
But I think that'll still be another minute, because if you think about an NC Miata, their automatic transes weren't that good. I haven't driven an auto ND, so I can't comment on that. But since it's a new car, I'll just assume it's okay for now. So it'll still be a minute until you can see a car that's, specifically in the Champcar world, low enough points that has a decent auto trans.
Yeah.
I think it'll still be a minute, but I agree. Whenever that switch will happen, parts will dry up because 80s cars aren't being built anymore because it's not the 80s. And we're turning these into race cars, which is fun, but we're blowing things up and wrecking them and whatever. These parts are disappearing. So, I think we will see this transition eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Kind of like I said, like drag racing, it's been the preferred transmission for many years. I mean, usually to see someone with a manual, I don't know, a lot of serious drag racers almost like kind of make fun of you, like, oh great, we're gonna have to clean up all the gears. They're gonna fly out of that thing as soon as you do your first 1-2 shift.
Yeah.
And that's kind of another aspect of it potentially is kind of what we talked about is the reliability, but not just from less driver error, but it is a lot easier having that torque converter. It's kind of acting as a fluid damper, protecting your drivetrain during shifts, and it works great in the drag racing community, and I imagine it'll work great in the track, the circuit racing community. Like
yeah. Well, I mean,
as long as you can keep the temps in check, it should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess going back to the new cars, that is one of the things you have to plan for, right? Even if you have a dual clutch transmission, which is pretty instantaneous in terms of gear changes, the manufacturer is controlling those ramp rates and everything. If you have a manual, you just have to assume that if you have a high-powered sports car, you should expect the customer to try and do burnouts, which is fair. You should be, if you spend that much money on a high-powered sports car, you should be able to do burnouts. Totally fair. Like I'm not disagreeing with that. But then all of a sudden you have to look at a manual and say, well, now we need to size this for some dingus who's just going to keep clutch dumping it, right? And now all of a sudden, you know, the manual you had in your previous gen car doesn't work because it's just not strong enough, because the car is heavier, because it seems like OE is just like adding weight for fun, but also, you know, more safety equipment. And then you have more power and stickier tires because that technology keeps evolving. And just everything gets worse for the trans or driveline anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's, and yeah, you just have to assume that it's going to be some mouth breather who has your manual trans. And, you know, so that drives the need for a new one, which is just unrealistic sometimes. So,
Yeah. Yeah, you can't always expect them to invest in designing a bespoke brand new transmission for a vehicle that already is probably going to be low volume, like a GT500. And then the number of people that are going to take the manual kind of segments that even further. So,
right.
you know, for them to put a bunch of R&D effort into developing basically a brand new transmission that hardly anyone's going to buy, you just can't expect them to do that.
Yeah, you really can't. I think we've mentioned this before, but like the 10-speed that's in everything is in everything because everyone had to pay for it because of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
It was billions with a B, right? For research and, you know, development and making it. But, you know, the reason the 10-speed is in the Camaro and the Silverado and the F-150 isn't because, you know, one of the OEs was like, ooh, I like that trans. Let me get that trans. It's because it was so damn expensive to like make a new one that they just split the cost and all paid ZF to do it. Right? Like, it's just as everything progresses and admittedly gets cooler, the the research that goes into it is crazy, and the money that goes into it is also crazy. Yeah. So, you know, for your low volume, like you want someone to make a manual transmission, 500 of those, maybe, in a specialty car? Like, come on. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it'll be, like you said, I think it'll be a very long time before you know, say Champcar or Lemons or WRL, AR, anyone racing in those leagues really needs to worry too much about, you know, not being able to find anything manual transmissioned. But, you know, it's something to think about for the future. Champcar will have to, you know, kind of pivot their rules to allow some of these newer cars in at some point. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. I imagine the points will have to drop a bit on the older cars, which could make them potentially still better, but just kind of harder. It'll be more for the teams that are willing to put the extra time in to keep making those cars reliable and making sure that they have all the parts on hand versus kind of just showing up with something new that has traction control and ABS and, you know,
Right.
potentially automatics that shift super fast. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I personally, my dream is to drive a sequential or dual clutch, you know, full on race car, like, you know, electronic or pneumatically shifted paddle shifters on every shift. Just,
right. Yeah, I mean, those
you
are
know,
sweet.
making glorious.
But if I can.
Yeah, making.
Go ahead.
Just, you know, making glorious noises. Just the acceleration of just not having to wait. You know, every time you shift, you feel like you lose that bit of momentum. Just the thing just accelerating to infinity. At least what it feels like. I think it'll feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's. I think they're all sweet. And if I can simp for Porsche for a minute, one of the things that I loved about that GT4 car was, out of all those cars, it was the closest to the road car. Almost everything was road car. Like you could go to the Porsche dealership and buy a part and put it on your GT4 car. Like it would have worked. And that race car used just the PDK that comes in that car. Which I think there is a manual option for the GT4 Cayman. GT4 being the trim for the road car, not the GT4 race car. Because why would you make that easy to differentiate? But I think there's a manual option. But the PDK is the exact same one that's in the road car, and it's I think that's dope. It's personally I think that shows a lot for what kind of abuse Porsche's road cars can stand up to. But yeah, it is sweet. There you go. Go buy a Cayman if you want to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to some, because I can shift, I can do manual, I can heel toe and everything. It just, if I didn't have to, I think I would go faster.
Right.
Like it would be
would.
easier. And I like going faster and winning and everything. So
yeah,
there'll always be a place for manual cars in my life. I mean, my Spec Miata, it's going to be manual forever. I'm sure Spec Miata will exist into the next millennia. Because why wouldn't it? So
right.
There'll always be a place for it. I just I think I'd rather also just go really fast. I want to go faster. So it's definitely always gonna. It still has a place. I just think it's just gonna be harder and harder to find them, especially in entry level cars, which is surprising in some ways, because a lot of times they would use those manuals to kind of bring down the MSRP of the car, so they could advertise it lower, but and then not build as many. Really, you would hardly see any on the lots, but now it's just they're finding the volumes aren't worth it, and they can save some money by just having one spec. It's easier to assemble. You don't have to worry about having more parts on hand, and easier.
There's a lot that goes
to
into
deal with in a lot of ways.
There's a lot that goes into making things easier on the manufacturing line, and that's certainly not having different transmissions is one of them. I think there's a lot that people don't see when it comes to cost cutting that these OEs do. A lot of it really comes down to what the assembly, I guess union workers are doing, right? So it's pretty, for sure. But there's a lot to it. Because if half the people in the world all of a sudden just said, I want a manual car, and they went out and bought them, I mean, they would start making more of them. Yeah. Yes, they would.
So there's a lot to it. I mean, I could get into all the different regulations, because nowadays manuals are less fuel efficient than automatics. It used to be kind of the other way around, partially because the available number of gears, as well as the kind of the losses you get from the older torque converters.
Mm-hmm.
And then manual has the advantage of being able to have fuel cut on decel, when you just keep it in gear and let out the gas. But nowadays it's because they're usually tuned, the gear ratios are tuned a little more for spirited driving. They tend to actually be worse. Usually at the very least on highway gas mileage, and then potentially a little bit in the city, but maybe not as much. But because of that, then there's kind of limitations on the number of transmissions they can spec as manuals, in order to still be able to advertise the overall fuel economy of the vehicle as a certain spec and everything. So
right.
So I mean, and with cafe and all this other stuff, it's just there's a lot to it.
There's
I think
there really
if
is.
you ultimately when it comes down to it, if you want to keep seeing manufacturers make manuals, then go out and buy them. But I think also be open minded for some of these new options coming out.
Yeah, either be
I think we can all
open-minded or
agree
go
that
buy some fucking new cars with a manual. One of the two.
I think we could all agree that CVTs definitely aren't the way to go for an enthusiast car. I think that's the one we can all agree isn't. Maybe should be
So
kind of avoided. Just
not for an enthusiast car, but honestly, in terms of engineering, I think it's a absolutely beautiful solution. Right? Why would you have 10 speeds when you could have infinite speeds? Right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you,
I
you have
mean,
just an
what?
infinitely variable ratio between, I mean, it depends on the CVT, but between two cones, right? And they're sliding against each other, and you can just anywhere. You can always be exactly where you need to be. I get it. It's boring. It's not a good enthusiast thing, but from an engineering perspective, I actually do really like CVTs. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The thing that annoys me most about CVTs though is when manufacturers still kind of basically program in distinct gears. Basically, I think it's more pleasant maybe for the driver because they're used to feeling
Yeah.
kind of gear spreads and shifts and everything. I'd rather see them just run the engine at the most efficient point at all times, since it is a CVT and it can do that.
Yes, it can.
However, that does lead to this really, really just terrible sounding. Just especially when it's a little 4-cylinder car, or just
It's just sad.
where it's just kind of groaning. It's just groaning at one kind of pitch, and that's it. Like it doesn't sound good. But as far as torque converted automatics, dual clutch, I mean, I think eventually that's going to be all we're going to be able to see. So, I mean, I think we have to prepare for it. I mean, then not to get into a whole nother thing, but electric cars too. Potentially, there'll be eventually you won't be able to buy a gasoline powered car, but that's
Right. Yeah.
hopefully for us enthusiasts, maybe not too far off, but maybe for the planet, maybe sooner than later is better.
Yeah. I mean,
But
so honestly, I like those too. So let's start with like what they actually do for you, right? So if you want to feel like you're driving a race car and you just want to hear a gear whine or that high pitch frequency, get an electric car, right? Like some of those, the noises they make sound like race car noises, minus the engine noise.
Yeah.
But generally, like if you hopped in a GT3 car, you wouldn't hear the engine because the transmission is so loud because they're all straight cut gears,
Yeah.
right? So you want the cool noises, electric car. You want all the torque at low RPM, electric car. And that comes from everything. That's acceleration. I mean, I remember when FCA, I guess, announced there'd be a hybrid Wrangler, and people were losing their mind. Like, this is a Jeep, it's America, you can't do that. It's like, yo, I understand you're probably just taking your Jeep mall crawling, so it doesn't matter. But if you're actually trying to rock crawl, you want as much torque at the lowest RPM as you can get. We have a device that will do that for you. It's an electric motor. It's made for this. Like
Yeah.
Hulk and the Infinity Stones. It's like it was made for this. Right? Like the fact that you just don't like it just because, right? It's electric. I rock crawl and electric's for the hippies or whatever's going on through your head. Like suits your needs best.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Honestly, I kind of like them. And I personally, humbly feel like the move for the best cars, and the highest performance cars, will be hybrids. I mean, you kind of saw that for a second with the 918, the LaFerrari, and the P1, and then other cars that were just ICE powered came out, and depending on what they were meant for, right, did better in certain aspects. But electric motors do really well at lower-ish RPM, and lower-ish is a very general term, right? They fall off hard at high RPM, but depending on the motor, high RPM is 12,000, not 5
Yeah.
or 7. And then so these hybrids, I think, is high RPM, your electric motor falls off, and that's actually right when your ICE engine starts to come into play. Like, that's when it hits its good streak. So I think that's really a fantastic relationship between the two.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we already see it in Formula One, LMP1, hybrid cars that are some of the fastest in the world, or the fastest in the world. And then, then we have electric race cars, Formula E, the Volkswagen IDR that has the Pikes Peak record.
Right.
And yeah, I think, my opinion is still I just want to go fast. If electric cars go really fast, which they do, I'm all for it. I don't really need the noises. I mean, I definitely don't need any more Miata 4-cylinder
It sounds awful.
bumblebee noises in my life.
Yes.
But
yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure we can come to appreciate the electric noises. Like, some people will be like, "Oh, look at the whine of my electric motor. It's so much better than your electric whine." And
and you can probably change that with the poles in the motor for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I guess the only thing I'm concerned about from an enthusiast perspective really is the weight. So I don't know how far you've gone on the spectrum, but if you go drive a Miata and then immediately after hop in a CTSV, again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but it's the car I own. Okay, so just relax. It's where I have experience. A luxury, high-powered sedan, an M car. Porsches aren't heavy; they're actually pretty light. But an AMG, an M car, an Audi, any of those, right? They're fast. You can really hustle them around a track, but in terms of driver feel, you feel the weight for sure. Even if they're sprung properly, and they have the right roll rate and all that other, happy horse shit. They're just the inertia's there. Physics doesn't change, and you notice that. And I guess that's the only concern I have, right? Is I don't want to lose ICE cars because they feel phenomenally better. Like, if you ever gave me an option, there's a reason I want a key car with a bike engine in it, right? Like, as little weight as possible. They just feel so much better. You're so much more connected as a driver. If there's a drum I'm gonna beat until I die, it's lightweight, and that's that is not what you get with an electric car, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also, I guess, unfortunately, with the push for just more and more range, it seems to be the biggest demand from the customer. any new battery technology doesn't really go into reducing the size, the weight of the battery pack, more into stuffing more batteries into the same pack to get more range, out of the same weight, basically.
Right.
So,
Which does give you a higher energy density, So if you wanted to have reduced range, you would have a lighter pack than otherwise you would have a few years before. But I agree, we need to go really far down that road to get to that point, and then they would also need to offer that as an option, right? Where's my super cheap 10 grand Tesla that only has like 80-mile range? That's the one I want, right? It's only rear wheel drive. It's minimally, outfitted. It's just got a motor and very small batteries. That's all I want,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you look at the IDR and it can just go up Pikes Peak or around Nürburgring and that's it. It's out of juice.
Yeah.
Once.
Mm-hmm.
And then Formula E, like at least I think it's been they've increased the range to that they don't have to swap cars in the middle. I'm not 100%. I haven't watched in a while, but I know in the beginning they had to stop. Their pit stop would be not changing tires. It would be changing the
driver
whole
runs
car.
to a different car.
Jump out.
Yeah.
Jump out, hop in another car, and get and go. So there's still ways to go for certain things like that, and I agree. The weight is always a problem. So yeah, it'll. I'd prefer not to race one unless we can get it to some reasonable weights below 3,000 at least.
Right.
But
and I mean, to the note, because we're talking about it, I feel like I should at least say, battery technology has increased faster than anything else ever because of this demand. And honestly, it's not just cars, right? Cell phones, honestly, are another huge portion of that market. But yet there's a huge demand in a lot of aspects, a lot of different aspects of, people's lives where they're demanding more performance out of the battery. And if you look at the time compared to improvement graph of batteries compared to anything else ever, it's phenomenal. Like it really is pretty awesome. When everyone targets one thing, how well we can, do it. It is really cool. But we're not there yet. I just want a 2,000-pound car max. No more. Just lightweight. That's all I want. That's all I care about.
Yeah. So it's, I think, the future, I think still looks bright for racing. It's definitely going to look different. But
yes.
But one thing that won't be different is that we'll still be here talking about it.
That's right. That's right. We will
discussing it, ranting about it.
Damn right. Always. I never stop ranting.
Of course.
Get a few White Claws in me, and I'll just go forever.
As long as you keep listening, we'll keep talking. Honestly, we'll just keep talking.
We're going to talk anyway, so whatever. Forget the listener. But speaking of all this new car stuff and changes and technology, did you see the announcement of the new Raptor? Son? Boy? You see it?
Yes.
All right. Well, for anybody who hasn't, dope. So the suspension has switched to a 5-link rear. So it's still a solid axle. But it's got coil springs. And if we're going to nerd out for a minute, what you're really getting from that is because you have the 5-link, you have a significantly higher lateral stiffness. Because leaf springs and their shackles are somehow expected to support that lateral movement. But surprise, if you actually have arms or mechanical links that are meant to support those loads, it's stiffer, mind-blowing. But then what that also means is the springs only need to do spring things. They don't need to, carry load or anything else. I mean, in a different direction, obviously. Obviously, the spring is still loaded up. But yeah, so it's got the specs, the more travels, and the more ground clearances and approach and departure angles, and it's dope. I guess the engine specs are not released yet or official yet, so that's still TBD. This new one is going to still be the EcoBoost. They did say there will be a V8 in the future, 2022, Scribe. 2022 V8 Raptor.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could almost have the same, save the manuals. You could also save the V8. Or,
yeah, you could. And one of those I care more about.
Even that's hard to.
It's really hard to justify
nowadays.
For sure. Yeah. Actually, as an interesting note, the I forgot his position, but one of those turds over at FCA said the Hellcat engine, right? Because that's the engine code that they used. Is not long for this world. It's probably only got a couple more years left, and that's because of CAFE standards. So it's almost done. They've really squeezed all they could out of it. They put it in absolutely everything. So good on them, I guess. Not to get too far off base, but it's an interesting ecosystem, right? So what you have to do, if you make cars that are not efficient, right, and you have this vehicle portfolio is the way that the government looks at it, and you saw so many cars with a certain fuel economy, emission standards, whatever, and it puts you in a certain position. So if you're FCA, what you do is ignore all that, put the Hellcat engine and everything, have absolutely abysmal performance, and then you buy these tax credits. Who do you buy them from? Well, you buy them from electric car manufacturers. Tesla never turns a profit, even though their stock always goes up. And honestly, the past few years, maybe not this most recent year, especially with nobody driving and shit, but for a while, that's the only reason Tesla ever had a profit, is because GM, Chrysler, and Ford all had to buy tax credits from them. So they were well into the red, and then all of a sudden, hey, we're good, right? And then the other large OEs have these tax credits that they need for CAFE standards. And Chrysler is the most egregious of them all, I suppose. But yeah, I guess it's interesting to note that that engine will be gone soon enough. So if you want your Hellcat or Hellcat Red Eye or Demon or whatever floats your boat, literally, because those vehicles are not light at all. They're boats. Buy it now, I suppose. But yeah, so that's interesting. And actually, while I'm ranting, I'll just keep going. While I'm on about that, all the time I hear about the TRX, right? You're not supposed to say that at Ford, If more than 10 people listen to this podcast, I might lose my job. But they don't, so we're good. Anyways, so you hear a lot in these magazine comparisons. They just compare the cars, right? A Ram or FCA entered the world, of the Raptor, which had been largely uncontested. And they obviously have this big supercharged V8. And because Ford announced there will be a V8, they say, is it, they're finally responding. Finally, after, I don't know what it is, 8 months or something, maybe. Not even, probably. And this is just horribly unrealistic. So just to give everybody an idea of how cars work and development, I was watching a documentary about the 918, but they focused on the 918, but they talked about all those hybrid supercars that we kind of mentioned earlier. And they were talking to the lead engineer of the 918. And they said, oh, so, it was this Porsche's response because McLaren came out with the P1. And McLaren had just come out with it 6 months earlier. And the guy starts laughing his ass off. And he's like, no way. Right? These cars are in development for years. Like the 918 was in development for over 5 years. Right? And I mean, that's life cycle of cars. I guess I haven't been around them enough to give you a good range, but 5 to 7 years maybe, right? So to ever think, and you can expand this to every other car ever when it comes to like two cars being close and they come out near the same time. One is not a response to the other in any way. Because they're working on it for 7 years before then. To think that a manufacturer is going to have a ready-to-go car 6 months, that's going to last 100,000 miles with blah, 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 blah warranty. No, it's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, I guess thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they can make some last-minute changes to kind of marketing strategies and pricing and that kind of thing, but as far as the design of the car and its specs and everything, it's kind of, it's been thought about, way, several years before. So, but sometimes you just get these times where it all kind of comes together, where you get the LaFerrari 918 and the P1 all kind of coming out in the same year or so, and making this big rivalry and everything. But they didn't see, oh, look, McLaren has, a hybrid. We should add a hybrid to our car. It's
right. There's no way.
So, there's a lot. There's definitely, having, working in the automotive industry, there's a lot that I learned that, being here, that it's a lot different than maybe you see, or think about, or think it is when you're kind of on the outside. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're on the outside and just reading those articles, which are fun to read, 100%. I obviously read them, and they're interesting and they give you good perspective. But, I guess when they refer to manufacturers having a response to another, just throw that part out of the window. That paragraph or those few paragraphs, just ignore that part because it's all speculative and wrong. So
there's a lot of interesting trends going on in the automotive industry, and but it's definitely very slow moving over time. Even companies like Tesla that are trying to be super fast moving, they're still they only come out with a new model every year or two, and
then the car's actually delivered to customers another year after that.
So everything takes a while to figure out, especially in these big companies. I mean, it can be for the good, and for bad. There's a lot of hands in the in the basket, or a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but ultimately it gives there's a lot of people can give their unique perspectives into it to make sure nothing's missed, and usually ends up with potentially more reliable products, and maybe something that's cheaper too. So there's I guess going back real quick, my question to you is, are you going to buy the new Raptor?
Yeah, dude, I'll just reach in my piggy bank and buy it. I don't know if they announced a price for it, but how much was the last one?
I think at least 60.
Okay.
The lower end one.
Yeah, I'll just go get a $60,000 truck. Because I do all the Baja racing, and yeah, that's easy. I'll do that for sure. I mean, I do like it, but yeah. All right, I just pulled it up. Starts at, so good luck finding one minimally optioned at a dealership. Also with no dealership markup. But yeah, it starts at 53, almost 5. So
Yeah.
it's only 55 grand. It's only money, dude. It's a good way to look at everything in life. It's only money.
Yep. Only money.
That's all it is.
Just spend your GameStop stock gains on it.
No. Hold. Diamond hands. Don't listen to this guy. Buy GME. Buy AMC. Maybe buy Nokia. Diamond hands. Hold. Don't sell. Hold. Or buy more.
Hold the line.
Hold the line or buy more. But we are the Roman centurion, formation. We're strong together. Hold the line. Don't. Oh, got it. I feel like.
Well,
don't sell it to buy a Raptor. Raptors or don't. Buy a Raptor if you have the money, but hold the line.
Okay, I think with that, I think it's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, thanks again for listening this long. It's good. Motorsport Tech Rambles.
Yeah, it's mostly what it was today is Motorsport Tech Ramble.
So, yeah, but as always, make sure if you wanna follow us more closely and everything, check out our Facebook and our Instagram at Motorsports Tech Talk. We usually post when the new episodes come up and everything then, and if you have any comments, leave them there.
I also have to say, not a financial advisor. Don't listen to me. I'm just some asshat talking about what I'm doing or what I would do with stocks. Don't take my advice. Thanks.
Yep. Motorsports, stock options.
No, we're not giving financial advice. None of that was advice. Just meme-based opinions. No advice. Don't listen to us. A little disclaimer on the end.
Yep. Always got to throw that in.
Yep.
Always got to. We're big fans of disclaimers here.
That's right. Don't sue me.
But I think with that we can wrap it up here. So
okay.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
See ya.